Welcome to the Witness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Trader, and this is episode 18. And I am excited to keep this thing moving. Before we get started, I've got some announcements that I'm really excited to make. As you know, we now have a new website up. That's www.thewitnesspodcast.org. You can jump on that website and you can find out more about who we are as the Witness Podcast. You can look up all of our episodes are available on there. There's a place where you can make donations if you feel so inclined. There's also a place where you can contact us. But the spot on the website that I am most excited about today is we are now able to offer Witness Podcast merch. We've been working on this for a while. I've been telling you that we were going to try to get some out this year, and we finally were able to get some out. So there's some up on the website. You can go on there. We've got 2 t-shirt designs. We've got a travel mug. We've got a trucker hat. We've got a camp mug and a phone case, and we're working on getting some more out there for you to choose from. So you can now represent your favorite podcast, and while you're representing your favorite podcast, you will be supporting our mission of getting this message out to as many people as possible. So please go on the website, www.thewitnesspodcast.org. Check out our merch. Hopefully you'll find something you like and you can buy that. And if you don't find anything you like, you can still leave us a donation and still support our mission. So I hope that you'll consider doing that. Once again, that is www.thewitnesspodcast.org. And I will leave a link to that in the show notes today. So that's the main announcement I have for you. Check it out. So it's just me here in the studio today, and in episode 15, I did a solo act, and I felt like God had some things for me to share, and I feel like He has some things for me to share again today, so you'll be treated to a little bit of a shorter episode than normal. I was digging through, I mentioned in episode 15 that I really enjoy writing, and I've written some short stories and some devotionals over the years, and I was digging through some of my archives the other day, and I uncovered a story that I think you will enjoy. And this story is set at a time when, well, the reason this story stuck out to me is because here in Maryland right now, it has been incredibly hot. We've had 100-degree days. We've had some days that were up to 106, 110. The heat index at least was up to 110. And we've had some really hot weather. And this story happens to take place at a time when the person in this story was dealing with some really hot weather. And so it just seemed to go along with the time we were in. So I thought I'd share this story with you. The story is based on the book of John, chapter 4. And in the book of John, chapter 4, we find at the end of chapter 3, we find that Jesus has been hanging out with John the Baptist, and he is in Judea, and he needs to go to Galilee. Well, in between Judea and Galilee, the most direct route, the shortest route to get from Judea to Galilee is through the region of Samaria. And the reason this presents a problem is because the Jews, and Jesus was born a Jew, the Jews had severe hatred for the Samaritans, and likewise the Samaritans had severe hatred for the Jews. So traditionally, if a Jew was traveling from Judea to Galilee, he would take the long way around and bypass the entire region of Samaria. But Jesus says something curious at the end of John chapter 3. He says, I must needs go to Samaria, in the King James Version. And this was so unheard of I, I guess I wanna like say like it would be if you've got any knowledge of politics, it would kind of be on the same level as Bernie Sanders showing up at a MAGA rally, not to rabble rouse, but because he actually has something that he feels like it's important to share with the people at the MAGA rally. Or vice versa, it would be like Donald Trump showing up to the Democrat National Convention because he has something that he wants to share with the audience there. That's how crazy and unheard of it would have been for Jesus to go through Samaria and to say, I must go to Samaria. That's how crazy this was. I want you to understand how unheard of it would be for a Jew, to show up in Samaria. I'm not 100% sure what this hatred is based on. I think, and you've got my email address, so you can fill me in or correct me if I'm wrong. It has something to do with the animosity between Joseph and his brothers way back in, I believe it's in Exodus, either Exodus or Genesis. I should be a little bit better with my Bible knowledge. But anyway, the animosity between Joseph and his brothers carried on down the centuries. And at some point after the reign of King David, there was actually a split in the kingdom of Israel. And so a lot of this animosity has been building over centuries, and now it's developed into full-fledged hatred between the Jews and the Samaritans. Another thing was, so the Samaritans and the Jews were both descendants of Jacob. Both technically they were all Israelites, but the Jews that had settled in the region of Samaria had also intermarried with some of the neighboring countries. So purebred Jews looked at the Samaritans as half-breeds, and they looked at them as less than, to the point that Samaritans were not allowed, even though the Samaritans observed many of the same customs and even a lot of the same religious practices as the Jews, they were not allowed to come to Jerusalem for the feasts and the different religious festivals. And so the Samaritans had to develop their own way of worshiping, and this was also like looked down upon, and the Jews, kind of looked at them like, you're not really doing this. You're not doing this right. So there was a lot of animosity, a lot of hatred. The Samaritans hated the Jews because of the way the Jews regarded them, and the Jews hated the Samaritans because they felt like they were less than. So that's kind of the setting of this story. That's where we're at here. And again, I'm not a scholar. Some of you may feel like there's some correction. And listen, if you email me and correct me, I'm open to that, and I will come back and do a little disclaimer in a future episode and let set the record straight. But that's the way I understand it, and that's where we are as we delve into this story. So here we go. The name of this story is A Woman We All Know Well. She dreaded going out this time of day. It was so hot. Nothing moved in the late afternoons in this region. The heat was blistering. People took shelter in their homes, and creatures took shelter in whatever shade they could find. She wanted to wait, but she knew she would need water for the evening meal. Most of the women in town went to the well early in the morning when the temperatures were at their coolest, or even later in the evening, and they would gather enough water to last them until the next morning or the next time they were going to come and get water. But not her. She couldn't take their stares. She knew what people said about her. The loneliness she felt in going to the well when there was no one else around. was far more bearable than the loneliness she felt when she was in a crowd but no one would speak to her. So she waited until the late afternoon, when any person or creature with an ounce of common sense would be hiding in shade. That's when she would make her trek to gather water. It was more difficult, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense, but that was the story of her life. Somehow, every choice she made had led her to a more difficult path. She wanted to make things right, to live a normal life, to be accepted by society. But there were so many twists and turns, and the road was so long and hard to get this far. Going back seemed out of the question. So here she was, heading out into this scorching heat to fetch enough water from the well to make her evening meal and hopefully to last until she made another trek tomorrow afternoon. As she walks, she takes the time to evaluate her life. How had it come to this? She was a little girl once, innocent, with dreams just like plenty of other little girls. She came from a big family, lots of brothers and sisters. In all the chaos, she frequently got lost in the shuffle. As she got older, she began to crave attention. Her need for love and acceptance grew into a bottomless pit. She went through relationship after relationship, trying to fill this deep void, trying to feel accepted, trying to find someone who would love her for who she was and not for what she would give. It all had brought her to here and now. 5 failed marriages and currently living with a guy she barely knew. And now she was walking to the well in the sweltering mid-afternoon heat so she wouldn't have to deal with the self-righteous stares of people who would never understand her. As she came near to the well, she could see it up ahead through the wavy lines of heat. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat and her stomach began to churn in knots. Who was that standing there at the well? She went through a lot of trouble to come out here when no one else was around. Who on earth could that be? She began to panic inside. Her mind was frantic. What should she do? Turn around? She couldn't. She needed this water. She felt completely panic-stricken. Waves of anxiety washed over her and caused her whole body to tremble. She was still drawing closer when she realized the stranger had seen her. Now she knew she couldn't turn back. The closer she came, she noticed something peculiar about this man. He was a Jew. What was a Jew doing in this part of the country at this time of day? Her curiosity caused her anxiety to slightly subside. Jews would typically take the long way around so that they would not have to enter into Samaria, and Samaritans likewise. Jews and Samaritans hated each other. The hatred went all the way back to the jealousy and hatred that Jacob's 12 sons felt towards Joseph. The Samaritans were the descendants of Joseph's sons' tribes, and the land they had been given was very fertile and beautiful. Although the children of Israel had managed to unite and live well together for centuries, there had finally come division after the death of King David. That division had turned into bitter hatred over hundreds of years until now. They waged silent war on each other, both sides sure they were right. So she was quite perplexed at the sight of a Jewish man milling around her ancestors' well in the middle of a blazingly hot day. As she approached him, he spoke. "Give me to drink." Her anxiety had become a thing of the past, and now she felt beside herself. Who is this man? He talks to me as if he knows me. The knots returned to her stomach. Does he know me? Is it possible? She summoned the courage to look him in the face. Now, she would remember. As she made eye contact with this man, the anxiety and questions that were churning through her melted away. Her eyes suddenly filled with tears, and a lump formed in her throat. She could not explain what was happening, but something in those eyes touched her deep in her soul. In a second, she felt the peace and compassion she had yearned for her entire life. She choked back the tears and decided she wasn't going to make it that easy for this man. She said, "How is it that you, being a Jew, asks a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? The Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans." The man stared deep into her eyes, as if somehow he could see in her eyes the years of emptiness and loss, as if he could see the countless nights she had cried herself to sleep. She felt as if he knew. She stood before him and felt like the little girl who was lost in the shuffle again, crying for someone to notice her. But he did notice her. He gave her a half smile and replied, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would ask of him, and he would have given you living water." She was slightly puzzled by his reply. What did he mean by living water? She responded, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From where will you get this living water? Do you think you are better than our father Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed?" The man was really smiling now, and something about that smile was contagious. Her spirit began to feel lifted somehow. He said, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give them will never thirst. But the water that I will give shall be in them a well of water springing up into everlasting life." It was suddenly becoming clear to her. She was starting to realize who she was talking to. Jews and Samaritans didn't talk, but rumors had made their way into town. Something deep within her began to cry out. She thought about the failed marriages, the years of pain and heartache that brought her here to this moment, and somehow she knew this man had the answer to everything she had been looking for. And she knew she had to have it. She cried out to him in desperation, "Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come to draw." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." Well, she had come too far, and this day had been too full of emotion. Besides, she had a feeling he already knew, so she wasn't going to lie about it now. "I have no husband." Jesus said, "You have well said, 'I have no husband.' You have had 5 husbands, and the man you're with now is not your husband." Now she was sure she knew who she was talking to. All the fear, all the anxiety, all the loneliness, it was all giving away. Excitement was beginning to ripple through her as she continued to realize what was happening. "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." She still felt as if she should prod him a bit more. "Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship." Jesus said to her in a voice that spoke to her innermost being, as if he had known her all her life, "Woman, believe me, the hour comes when you will neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews." Her heart sank slightly at this reply, but Jesus continued, "But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him." Her heart now felt as if it would pound out of her chest. She was overwhelmed with joy and desire to have what he spoke of. She knew she could worship that way. She suddenly realized that was all she had ever wanted, to be able to give herself to someone that would give themselves back. She just needed some kind of purpose. Jesus finished, "God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." She replied to him, "I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things." Jesus said to her, "I that speak unto thee am he." She dropped to her knees, trembling. Tears flowed from her eyes, tears for every lonely night, for every time her heart had been broken, tears for every time her trust had been shattered, tears for every time she had been rejected, tears that emptied her soul before the Messiah. But after the tears, there was more. She began to feel herself being filled. It was a feeling she was very unfamiliar with, but she loved it. It was as if she was hearing someone say, "I love you," but now she was beginning to feel what those words really meant. Her heart was beginning to swell with joy and peace. She thought she might just explode, and the relief, sweet relief. She had trudged to the well that day in the sweltering heat, with years of failure, years of rejection. Such a heavy load that she wondered how much longer she would be able to make the trip. But now, she dashed back to town so full of life and joy that she forgot her water pot. She knew she was going to have to tell everyone about who she had just met and what had happened. She was so light and happy, she no longer cared what people thought of her or what they would see. She had to tell everyone, because there was no way she could contain the immense joy that her Savior had just given her. I hope you enjoyed that little story. I guess you would call it a short story. And it kind of leaves me with a couple of questions that I'd like to pose to you this afternoon. Why did Jesus choose the woman at the well as the one he needed to talk to that day? When you read, the verses leading up to when he meets her at the well, you can tell that Jesus was making that trek through Samaria intentionally to meet this particular lady, because he knew when she was going to be showing up. And he happened to be there right at the exact time that he knew she would be there. And why did he choose her? I think the average person, if they were trying to get the message out to a town or whatever, if they had something to tell the town, they might go to the mayor or one of the more respected people in town. But Jesus chooses a woman that he knows everyone already thinks poorly of, and that's the person he decides he wants to meet with to get his message out. It's interesting how Jesus often chooses to start from the bottom and work his way up. Even like that's how he was born. I mean, he was born in a manger, and he was placed in a manger. He was born in a stable as a fatherless. The world looked at him as a fatherless son because Mary had gotten pregnant before her and Joseph were married. So Jesus chose the most unrespected way you could come into the world. That's the way he chose to come into the world. And then he chooses this. I mean, you can imagine the slurs that they probably threw at this lady. And that's who he chooses to touch first in the town. It's interesting. And I think it's because he knew that the change that would take place in her life would be something that no one could deny. They would know that something had to have been, that something was different about this lady, and they would all inquire. And through her, he spread his message through Samaria, which is another thing. Jesus came and he brought this message primarily to the Jews, but he made it clear several times throughout his ministry that this message wasn't just for the Jews. We talked in an earlier episode about his conversation with the Roman centurion. The Romans were Gentiles who were, in a sense, like oppressing the Jews. But Jesus heals the centurion's servant. And then he goes into Samaria. And so he's proving to his disciples and anyone who's willing to look that, look, I'm here for everybody. This message is for everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your culture is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your politics are. My message is for everyone. I think we should remember that in our own daily lives, that this message we carry as we go out into the world, it's not just for one kind of person. It's for every person who's willing to listen. And perhaps we should look for that person who we know is hurting as we go about our business. And the last thing I wanted to speak to you about based on this story is, I wonder if there's anyone out there who can relate to the woman at the well. Has life just seems like it just dealt you a bad hand of cards? You just, no matter how hard you try, it seems like you always make the wrong decision. No matter how hard you try, it just seems like you can't get this right. And now you find yourself so far down the path that it seems like there's no way back. If that's you, I want to say to you, there is a way back. Or maybe, to put it better, there's a way forward. Just turn to Jesus. He came here to this earth. He did the things that he did. If I could say this, he did that for people like you, for people like me, for people who think we just can't get it together, for people who realize we have no other hope. Let Jesus be your hope. He wants to be a well of living water in your soul. I believe, and I've heard, I guess it's kind of a cliche, we are all born with a God-shaped void in our hearts. And if people don't find God, they wind up trying to fill that void with other things. This lady was trying to fill that void with what she thought was love, relationships. She'd been married 5 times. And who knows how many other relationships she had in the meantime. She was trying to fill a void. She was thirsting for something, and she couldn't figure out what it was. And then other people, as you've heard in various testimonies on this podcast, they're trying to fill the void with drugs. They're trying to fill the void with alcohol. They're trying to fill the void with good times, with friends, with jobs. But if you could just, and you know, when we do that, we make a mess of things. And Jesus is standing there at the well, waiting for you, willing to give you something that once you have it, you'll never thirst again. You'll never need anything else to fill that void with again. So I urge you, my friend, I urge you to turn yourself to Jesus. If you can relate to that lady, he's waiting for you. If you don't know how to do that, start by talking to him. You're welcome, as I said, you're welcome to reach out to me here at thewitnesspod@gmail.com. If I can be of any assistance at all, I am willing to do that. Perhaps you know someone in your life that could give you some help. But I urge you, start off just by talking to him. And you can talk to him just the way you would talk to anybody. So that's it for episode 18. As I mentioned before, I want to say it again. As I mentioned before, we have a website. You can find that at www.thewitnesspodcast.org. Hopefully you'll go check that out. You'll consider buying some merch to support the podcast, represent your favorite podcast. Also, I'm thinking about adding a page to the website where I have a compilation of these short stories in case you might want a copy of them. I've got more that I'll share as time goes on, but I'm thinking about posting them on the website so that you can have access to them in case you want to have a copy of them for yourself. So let me know what you think about that. And as I said before, if you can't find any merch you like on the website, there is a place where you can donate to the podcast if you'd like to partner up with us and what we are trying to do here. Eventually I'd like to be able to promote the podcast on some other platforms so that we can reach as many people as possible with this message, and your donations and your merch sales would certainly help us with that mission. I will again leave a link to the website in our show notes, so make sure you check that out. Again, you can reach me at thewitnesspod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. If you have any ideas for upcoming episodes, if you have questions about anything, if you have a critique even or something you think would make the podcast better, please reach out. And again, like as I said earlier, if you've listened to this story today and it's touched you and you feel like you would like to reach out to Jesus, but you don't know how and you'd like some more direction, you can email me at thewitnesspod@gmail.com, and I will do what I can to help you out. I promise that I will read every single email that comes my way, and I will do my very best to respond to each one. Well, I think that covers everything for now. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like or leave us a review. And like I always say, most importantly, above everything else, if you don't want to go to the website, if you don't want to buy anything, if you don't want to leave a donation, I don't care. I'm putting that stuff out there. But the one thing I ask before, more important than anything else, share this podcast, share this episode with someone that you know could use some encouragement from it. If you want to be notified every time a new episode drops, make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram, where I post additional pictures, reels, and other content. And I will leave a link to our Instagram page also on the show notes. So that's it for this week. Until next time, we are adjourned.